This is Creative Banter, a creativity and philosophy-focused podcast hosted by Cody Schultz and Ben Horn. Buckwheat and oat milk ice cream get us started on this episode, oddly enough, before we move on to discussing the weather and a rather disappointing interaction while out in the woods. For the majority of the episode, we speak on artificial intelligence and what it means primarily for writers, as we see more people using ChatGPT for article outlines and school essays. Our discussion turns toward Volume 2 of Ben's Unpolished series, which re-sparks a consistent conversation about eBooks. And since it's that time of year, we end this episode by talking a bit about taxes and Ben's somewhat disappointing 2022 financial year. Let's dive right into it, shall we?
That's not a great thing. That's for sure.
I started eating this new ice cream.
All right.
It's oat milk ice cream. It's from Oatly. It's
okay.
like a brown fudge or a fudge brownie chocolate kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And besides it being good, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't eat it, they have these little protective lid things that go on top of it, like the little plastic bits, because they're packaged just like Haagen-Dazs or Ben & Jerry's, so they have that little protector on the top, and each one is different. Each one is like, you will end up with a different little saying or some kind of funny little thing when you open it up. Mm-hmm. And this one that I got the other day says, "Congratulations, you're one of the lucky individuals to receive this limited edition Tony Peterson signature protective lid collector's item made just for you." And then on the bottom, upside down, it says approximately 55,000 in first batch.
But it's a limited edition.
Yeah.
The first batch.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny, especially relating back to a little bit of what we talked about last week with limited edition prints and what we've talked about before, and just that idea of something being limited. And I love that they poked fun at that too. So
yeah. I mean, I was at Costco the other day, and because I was going to go buy some blueberries, because I usually have those for every breakfast, and it just said like limited edition blueberries. I'm like, well, I mean, technically everything's limited.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely used as marketing hype.
Yeah, I like when a company does those kind of funny little things like that they're just stupid, but they just add something to it that you don't see a lot. Like I don't know if it might be Oatly or it's Planet Oat. I can't remember. One of them does obviously oat milk as well, and on the side of the box they have like the fun facts, that kind of thing, and then they say the not so fun but the important side, and just like little fun, I guess you would consider it marketing tactics, whatever, but just something to add to the mundane nature of the world and like spruce it up some. It's always just cool.
Yeah. On the on a slight tangent, but something that I tried for the first time on my winter trips to Death Valley and Zion that worked out very, very well, and this would be something that's could be beneficial for people that are camping. But I like basically every day for breakfast when I'm at home, I have buckwheat, which is really, really good. It's nutritious. It's really good. And I learned about it from my wife because when she grew up in Russia, basically buckwheat is kind of like having oatmeal.
Okay.
It's not very commonly found here in the States, but I'm able to find it at a kind of a non-traditional grocery store. But the roasted buckwheat, basically you prepare it with some, when I'm at home, I'll prepare it in a pressure cooker, and then I make quite a bit of it, and I just put it in bowls and put it in the fridge so I can have it each day. But it's a great source of energy, great source of nutrition. Throw some blueberries in there, which is what it got me thinking about it, and some olive oil and such. But on my recent trip, I had learned a little tip that if you take a very small thermos, they make some for food, put the right amount of buckwheat in there, you kind of figure out as you go, and then add boiling water and close it up. If you do that in the evening, your breakfast is waiting for you in the morning. It'll be like the perfect temperature, no effort whatsoever in the morning, especially if it's really cold and wintry and the hands are frozen. It's hard to light stoves and such. But man, that worked out so well when it went on that trip. And it is super inexpensive too. I mean, it's a great breakfast to have. So just a little side tangent there. If anyone's looking to have some really good camping breakfast, oh man, that was fantastic and worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I might have to keep that in mind for my camping trip coming up for Acadia. Well, not really coming up. It's still months and months away, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Try and remember that.
Yeah. It worked out really well. And just the fact that I would make it just after I made the dinner every evening, because my stove is already out, just boil up some water, dump it in there. But just the fact that, you wake up on a cold morning, you got your meal ready to go. I am planning on kind of weighing the buckwheat, weighing the little thermos I have, and see at what point it makes sense to perhaps bring that on a backpacking trip. So, because at some point it's a lot less bulk, but it still does have some weight. So
yeah,
I may have to do some math on that and see if I can figure that one out, because that would also be nice to have on backpacking trips.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back out there. The weather is now starting to possibly turn more towards spring. This week We've been primarily in the 60s, high 50s, I want to say, at least by the afternoon. Yeah, so it's starting to get there. Things are starting to pop up. Flowers in the garden are starting to come out, but I'm waiting though, because I know Pennsylvania a little bit too well these days. I'm just waiting for that surprise snowstorm where we get dumped 6 inches at once, and then after that, then it'll be over. But
yeah, we're still getting the rain here. It rained so hard 2 nights ago that I had to go out and unclog the rain gutters, because a bunch of new leaves and stuff blew on the roof, and then it just clogged up the rain gutter. So I was out there in a huge downpour and a ladder unclogging them, and it wasn't crazy. There's my wife and I took our dog for a waddle, along with her aunt and uncle, who have a dog that they're fostering, a much bigger dog, but we went for this walk along this area, and it's an area where there's these really big hillsides on either way. There's a river that goes down between them, and all the hills are alive. There's waterfalls all over the place. Water was just draining out of things, and it's so unusual to see that here in San Diego, to see green hillsides with waterfalls and everything. So I saw that. I'm like, this is beautiful, but I'm not going to be able to go skating for about 2 weeks, and this kind of sucks.
Yeah, there's always trade-offs to everything.
Yeah, pros and cons.
Yeah.
Pros and cons.
The last weekend I went on a hike because my girlfriend wasn't around, and it was nice to get out on my own. But at one point I went and was photographing a telephone pole.
As one does.
Yeah. And I was waiting for the clouds behind it. I had already gotten my first sheet of film exposed, but this is a telephone pole that I've come back to multiple times now. It's honestly getting ridiculous. And so I wanted to try and get a backup shot just in case something happens, whatever. And so I was sitting there just about a half hour. I kind of felt like you. I was just missing the camera, or the video camera.
Yeah.
Waited for about a half hour, and then this couple comes walking by, and they look over at me, and they're like, and she says to me, so what are you doing? As they're walking, mind you, she says this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm just photographing this telephone pole waiting for the clouds. And she goes, why don't you just Photoshop them in?
Yeah.
I had like no words. I think I said something stupid along the lines of like, oh, it's because it's film. Which, like, obviously in hindsight is just doesn't really matter. But at the same time, she was walking away. She wasn't the type of person that was going to stop and actually, like, be open to the education of why I wouldn't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, whatever. But the rest of the hike, I was just like, thinking about that instance, I'm like, why? Like, the whole point of me not photoshopping in the clouds is because I enjoy sitting here and waiting and just being in nature. Like, I'm not looking for...
It's all about the process.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the process and just being in nature. Like, I don't want to sit in front of a computer screen for a half hour trying to Photoshop in clouds or resorting to AI or anything like that to do it for me. Like, that's not the point. But yeah,
It seems that experience is lost on a lot of people, and I don't know, maybe it speaks to just people don't value images as much as in the past and stuff like that we've talked about in the past. But I don't know, it's and the fact that she didn't even break stride to inquire more, just kept talking and walking. It speaks a lot about, I think, society in general, like not even stopping to converse, just saying something and just keeping going.
Yeah, exactly.
And what she's saying is metaphorically exactly what she was doing in terms of just keeping moving, not even stopping to pay attention to what's going on or to have an actual conversation.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If she would have stopped and just be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Then I would have at least had a chance to try and, I guess, educate would be the right word, or at least converse about why I'm doing it in the way that I'm doing it. Because I've had conversations in the field like that. I've had people come up, and it's not always something that I like look forward to happening, but you're out with a large format camera, you're gonna be like really easily noticed and questioned because of it. But I'm like, in those instances when people actually want to have a conversation, I'm more than willing to have a conversation and to show them and to like even have them go under the dark cloth and be like, hey, this is this, like get like a feel of it or whatever. Like, yeah, but I don't know. That's just, like you said, that says a lot about society, specifically this individual. Like, the fact that you can't even slow down and have a short conversation with someone is, yeah.
Yeah, and whenever I've had experiences like that, I've always walked away from it having a very negative feeling about it. And it's almost as though just the person is just very willing just to toss stuff out there, but has no real feeling for the impact that they're having on other people, in what they might think is something more trivial or whatever. But something like that can just like really make it so for the rest of the day, I'm just thinking back to that and just not feeling great about the interaction or anything else.
And my girlfriend and I were out shopping the other day, and she was down an aisle looking for some kind of cereal or something. And this guy, mind you, he was with his wife, and he looked at her and said something along the lines of, "You look lost. It's cute." And then walked away. And for the rest of that time that we were shopping, she was like thinking about that, like, what the hell just happened? Like, said that to a grown woman. Mind you, she's short, and so she looks younger, but nonetheless, said that to a grown woman in front of your wife and thought that that was okay. And like you said, that was on her mind the rest of the time. Like the 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I typically try to get away from people.
Exactly.
The interactions are not, it's not a flip of a coin 50-50. I find that for the most part, I don't know. I'm often left disappointed with humanity.
Yeah, I've been trying this year especially to get better because I find like I have a tendency to be very like pessimistic, and I think the majority of us do, because pessimism, it sells better, it sounds more intelligent, it sounds better. But I've been trying to be like more optimistic, and it's so damn hard though when you have instances like those where you're just like, come on guys, really? Like, be better. Like, give a little effort maybe. But
pessimism is largely grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And I think as one gets older and has more experience, and then they witness much more stuff, I think people generally tend to get more, become more of a pessimist at times. So
it's tough.
Yeah, you've got a future ahead of you. Where if you're feeling that degree of pessimism now, man, you're gonna be a very pessimistic person by the time you reach my advanced age.
I'm gonna be the normally you have like the 75-year-old, 80-year-old who's shaking his cane at kids and screaming at the clouds. I'm gonna be like the 40-year-old doing that.
Yep,
it's gonna be great.
Just like I shake my inline skates at people.
No, I'm trying, like I said, to see more of the optimistic side, and it, like I said, it's difficult like on the day to day. But if you look at how the world is versus how it was even 50 years ago, as a whole, things are getting better. Like, things are improving. It's just, you have to see it on a expanded timeline. And given that we only live for 70 years as our American average or whatever it is now, that's not a long time. Like, so I definitely see why most of it is pessimistic, but
yeah, for sure.
But speaking on something that could be seen as good or bad, in one of the Discord groups, I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but if he does, I'm sure he'll know who I'm talking about, or at least some of our listeners will know. Someone had posted an outline for an article that was created by ChatGPT.
Okay.
And this article, let me pull it up on my phone real quick, or this outline, I should say, was for a blog post on the mental health benefits of having nature art in the home, particular focus on forest photography and the color green. And it's actually like a pretty solid outline.
Mm-hmm.
And for the fun of it, I then plugged in a prompt myself just to see what would happen. And for an outline of a blog post about AI writing photography blog posts. And I thought, again, what it spit out was obviously like your introduction, explain the growing trend of using AI for writing tasks, introduce the topic of AI writing photography blog posts. Then your first subheading would be how AI writing works, briefly explain the technology, discuss the benefits. Then your next would be examples of AI written photography blog posts, which don't know how I'll find those, but it's a good thought. Next one would be advantages and disadvantages of using AI, benefits of using it, potential downsides, such as lack of creativity and inability to convey emotion. So at least it knows itself pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
How to use AI for photography blog posts, discuss the steps involved, tips for optimizing the use, the future of AI writing for photography blog posts, potential advancements in AI technology, human role, or the role of human editors, and then finally a conclusion with summarize the key points of the article, offer a final perspective on it. I still don't know how to feel about that. Like,
Yeah.
part of me thinks, okay, yeah, it's cool that you could get such a fleshed out idea from a single like sentence, from a single written idea, so to speak, that you can just write in a prompt like that and it'll spit out essentially an article for you, minus the more intricate details.
Yeah.
Like, because I could take that outline, throw in, I don't know, 250 words for each of those headings, and have a 1,500 word article, something along those lines. Same thing with the one that was posted on a Discord group. Very easy.
Yeah.
But even AI admits it, there's no creativity to that. Like, so, yeah. I mean, I read an article that related this. I think David Hunter sent it to me, and it was about this ChatGPT in the classroom too, and how AI is going to affect the classroom for English. And it was saying about you really have to rely on creativity anymore in order to get students to actually write authentically, like, and not to rely on technology for this. And I was just curious what your thoughts on that were, because, like, yeah, I really can't see myself using it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for what I do, I honestly don't see it as a threat. I don't see it as a tool that would benefit me necessarily. Especially as I'm tending more towards, like, with the Unpolished series eBooks, where it's handwritten journal entries in the field, which is designed to be kind of, a bit rough by nature and just kind of putting thoughts out there. And it's going against the highly polished sort of thing that we see, which is what that, like the ChatGPT is basically able to do. So I don't know. I don't really see it as of any value for what I'm doing. I don't see it as a threat for what I'm doing. You're certainly in a different position where, as a writer, here comes this technology that has the ability to produce, something that is rather sophisticated, with very little effort. Not that it would directly impact you from the standpoint that, it's going to replace what you do, but at the same time, perhaps it becomes a more crowded field where other people actually start using that, and it's hard to stand out from the crowd, because publications are paying for articles and such. Now suddenly you're lowering that barrier of entry, and then you have more people that are able to compete in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough enough to find,
albeit unfairly, for sure.
Yeah, it's tough enough to find articles or publications rather that will pay decently for articles that you've spent a lot of time writing, a lot of time thinking about, and then to have something like this come in where it can spit out an article in not even 5 minutes, it's problematic. Like, it's definitely problematic. But at the same time, in terms of, like, SEO boosters and stuff, it's no brainer. I mean, it spits them out like none other. So
yeah,
I'm not worried, like, for me in terms of competition, because everything that I write about, for the most part, is very personal. It's very based on my own experiences and my own thinking behind it. So there's that, again, that creativity, using that creativity for writing and doing creative writing. But in terms of, like, I don't know, camera reviews or, like, just basic technical tutorials, I could definitely see it, like, taking over for that. I just don't know how to feel about the using it for outlines and stuff, because like to write up an outline isn't that difficult, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it's really no different than using other resources to try and flesh together an outline. It's just a different type of resource. But
yeah, and what I was thinking is at this point in time, if you look at some of the stuff that is being written by it, it's very impressive because you look at it and it doesn't immediately strike you as this is something that is AI generated. Like, oh, this could very well have been, written. It's very impressive that it was able to figure out what it did. I do wonder if after more time has passed, if we see something from it, there will be more obvious telltale signs that, oh yeah, this is AI. And I know they're going to keep fine tuning it and making it better and better, but kind of like with like certain maybe like photo editing techniques, where when you're not super well versed with all the things that can be done, you see an image in it and it really stands out and it pops, but then after a while you learn these techniques that people are doing, and then you start seeing these patterns and things, and then it really starts to lose some of its appeal when you see the way that things are kind of pieced together. So I wonder if we're going to be able to spot those patterns a little bit more with the passage of time, or whether it will just keep improving, which I imagine will be the case, and it will be increasingly more difficult to spot it.
I think it will be more difficult to spot it. I think right now is one of the best times to be able to spot something that is written by AI. If you're going off of like what Midjourney right now is doing, I don't know if you've been keeping any kind of track even loosely about it, but they've just done an update, and one of the big problems with like portrait AI was that the number of fingers like was always wrong, and even like facial features were a little like just off. They've fixed that now. So there are photos out there that were created with AI that are like journalistic photos of a riot in, I think, France or something like that. And I mean, besides the fact that the images have kind of like a smoothness to them, like a smoothing filter, especially to the skin tones and such, you really couldn't tell. Like there are certain photographs or certain AI creations that look just like photographs, and it is like terrifying. So I don't think that it'll be long until we can't really can't tell if something is written by AI versus a human, besides that creative intersection. But again, it's still in its relative infancy. So yeah.
And I was also thinking that as that technology improves, in terms of being able to just draw from all the resources that are out there, I was thinking that it may very well have some other, it's going to have a lot of, it's a very significant impact on many, many different things. But I was also thinking about, if at some point people will be able to, basically give it a photo of perhaps a very, of a location that's not very well known, and it will be able to figure out exactly like GPS coordinates where that photo was taken based on all the information that's out there. And whether there will be some implications from stuff like that will have a very negative impact on certain resources, just because there's so much information out there it can pull from. And it does have me wondering how far reaching some of this stuff will go.
Yeah, that is scary to think about, that like just being able to send it a picture of like, I don't know, my family's cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
And be able to get GPS coordinates off of that.
Yeah, if there's like some sort of like mountain in the background where it sees like the shape of it or something like that, it pulls it from all these other ones that looks the same. It triangulates stuff. I mean, it's kind of scary in that sense.
Yeah.
Really, really, where all of this stuff could go when you just pool all this information together, and you simply ask a question. Where was this photo taken? Maybe you'll get to the point where it actually has the ability to do that.
I mean, there are already people that can pretty accurately do that. So
Yeah.
it's only a matter of time before we figure out how to code that into AI and just be like, okay, now you do it for me, so I don't have to go through the work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things progress in the next few months, even. One thing I forget who said it, I just read it today. Someone had mentioned how important it is to realize that, like, this is a very emotional time in terms of AI. Like, there are a lot of high emotions with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're either really for it, really against it, and there's not a lot of neutrality.
Yeah.
So to try and comment on it, like, in any kind of cemented way is difficult. But I will say one more thing, and then I'll leave AI alone for a while. But there have been a couple different articles, and I will link them all below. But Matt Payne did an article that was really solid for Nature Photographers Network. And then there's one, I think Guy Tall and Tim Parkin each did an article for On Landscape. So in terms of how AI is going to be affecting photography, or how it currently is, definitely recommend checking those articles out. But otherwise, yeah, it's going to be a fun little journey as we see how things change.
Yeah. And speaking of how things change, I earlier today I was working on volume 2 of the ebook series that I started this past fall called Unpolished. And so I've just been, it's something we've talked about in the past, where it's a compilation of my handwritten journal entries from when I'm in the field I scan, along with pictures of the film on a light box that are basically I adjust them on the computer so it resembles the exact experience of looking at it on the light box, so that you're basically looking at the unedited film. And then this time around, I also have some Fuji Instax photos I shot while in the field that I scanned in to kind of throw in there.
Oh, cool.
And I was also thinking of, because initially this was kind of seen as something to accompany the video journals that I produce. But then I started, in this volume 2, I started thinking that, I should pull from some other resources as well. So, for example, there are some pages where if I just take a screen grab from one of the videos and drop it in there, then there's the handwriting on one page, and then there's that frame grab on the other one. There's not a lot of frame grabs, but I've put a few of them in there just to break things up a little bit and to kind of tell a bit more of the story. But just kind of drawing from all these different resources and putting them in there. And it's been pretty fun to put together, as this format is now changing a little bit to the point where I see this as a very interesting storytelling format, kind of like doing the video journals, but it allows me to go so much more in depth in a way that I can't in the videos, just by having those written journals. And it's weird how things really tie in together in ways that I didn't fully anticipate. But I have that all laid out, kind of like a rough draft, and now I'm going to go through and fine tune it. But in the process of doing that, I have all these pictures of the film on a light box, and then I'm referencing those as I'm going through and adjusting the edits of those scans of the film. And it has me going through and reevaluating all the images. And so it's kind of it's almost like a checks and balances kind of thing, where going through all that stuff again, putting it together, and then going through and rephotographing the film, and then comparing the scans I did a while ago to that film and adjusting my edits. It really has been a very enlightening process to go back to the originals and to work with those images again now that more time has passed since going on the trip. But it really is a fun project, and so it'll be fun to see how this one all goes together once everything else is included in it.
Do you have an idea about when you're going to release that?
So that is going to come out after the last of the video journals.
Okay.
So
kind of figured.
Yeah, because I don't really want to like spoil any surprises. So I mean, that's still going to be about 7 weeks away or so, but I'll have that done and ready. And so that will, and just like the previous one, it ends up being an ebook that is sold through my website. Though I'm also toying with adding another tier to my own Patreon that will include those, where those people automatically get that. So I have all the details to work out on that, but it is kind of exciting to have a new format to work with from a storytelling aspect that is more in depth than a video can do.
Yeah, I gotta play more with ebooks again. I gotta pick those back up and see, because like I keep going back to that A Morning Walk series that I worked through, and I know that I want to release that. I just don't know if I want to do it as a free ebook or if I would want to do it as something that's paid. I'm kind of leaning more towards a free ebook, but I'm also trying to figure out how I want to proceed with it in the future. Like, do I want to keep doing it with the Mamiya RB67, or do I want to change things up? I think we talked about it a little bit with the Ricoh.
Yeah.
And because that way it's much cheaper, much lighter way of doing things. I can experiment a bit more and not have to worry so much. Obviously, it takes away a lot of constraints. So there are a lot of questions revolving around that.
Yeah. So for the ebook, so what is it that your thought process is when it comes to whether it's a paid ebook or a free ebook? I'm curious, what it is that you're looking at that's you're having to decide between and the various factors involved.
The biggest thing is personally, if I'm going to purchase an ebook, I want some kind of value out of it. Like, I want to feel as though I'm getting something from it. And to purchase an ebook like this, it just doesn't feel like it has like any true value to it, I guess. Besides it just being a collection of images, it just feels a little weird for me to sell. Like, I know that you have with Unpolished that's a paid ebook that you're doing.
Yeah.
But like, for me to do, even if I was in your shoes, like, I would be, I don't know. I just feel weird about putting a price on that. Like, I would feel better doing it as a free ebook and having at the last page be like, hey, if you got value out of this, then pay. Like, then here's a donate button kind of thing. Because I know like Sarah Marino and some others have had pretty success with that. But still, like, I think that's where I get hung up, is that idea of value.
Yeah, and that's definitely a very good point. In the past, all the ebooks I've done were more educational in nature, and the ones that had the most broad appeal were certainly the ones that did the best. But that being said, I think it's, I don't know, it is a tough one, though I will say that at least with the series that I'm doing now, the Unpolished series, I see them as something that's a bit of an escape where just like how people will watch the videos because they want a little bit of an escape, I think that these can be quite similar, where it's something that you can get lost in for a little bit. And I think there's value in that, partially from a storytelling aspect. But I think when you combine that with people wanting to find ways to support artists that they appreciate the work of, I do think that there's a market there. And the donation model is also an interesting one. But we'll see. And another thing too, and I don't know if I've brought this up in the past, but whenever I have an ebook that sells, or a voluntary contribution through PayPal or anything like that, or a print sale or portfolio sale, I log all of that into my QuickBooks. And one of the things that I've noticed is that most of the time, if I'm logging someone in as a new customer, it's usually because they're buying an ebook. Mm-hmm. If they're a repeat customer, they could have bought all kinds of things in the past. But if I'm putting the person's name in an email and stuff, how I keep everyone kind of sorted out. But if I'm logging them into my QuickBooks for the first time, it's usually because they bought an ebook. So I see that as kind of like an entry into whatever ecosystem of stuff it is that I create. So I do see, in a sense, where if a person's buying it as, if they're downloading it for free, it's kind of an entry into that system of everything else that that you create. But it's just one little observation that I have based on my own stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to try and find that balance. Like I said, I want everything that I put out that has a price on it to have value. Even the things that I put out that don't have a price on it, I want value.
Yeah.
But to try and figure out then, okay, so if I do decide to have it as a paid ebook, at what price point is it not enough value, even if it is just as an escape kind of thing? Like, is $5 fair, or is that too little? Is $15 too much? Like, where's that line going to be drawn? Where does it need to be drawn? And I think that's kind of where the donation route at least seems to make more sense, because then people can really, they have much more of a free choice. Like, okay, you got to the end of this. If you feel like you got value, great. If you feel as though that value is worth money to you, then here's how you can support me. So it's tough.
Yeah, and on a unrelated note, which is very much a related note, it's probably not best to take any sort of advice from me, because I did my taxes on Friday.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I started doing my own photo stuff, like, as I despise the term full time for whatever reason, but as I decided to pursue a career in landscape photography in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. So 2020, 2021, 2022. And for whatever reason, last year, not a great year for me.
No.
So I always crunch the numbers. And now this takes into consideration expenses. And my expenses are, purchase the film and, buying the paper for the portfolios and everything else. And also I did buy a camera in 2022. But when I look at the numbers, I'm like, oh man, I'm sure glad that my wife has a decent job, because I made a little less than minimum wage. So yeah, pros and cons. Though I will say that my wife and I have a very we have a very low stress life. We don't have any outstanding debt. Our expenses are very low. But at the same time, looking at the numbers at the end of the year and going, oh, that's not great. Definitely gives me motivation to continue to work hard and to try to find other ways to be more productive. And I think in 2021 was a decent year for me. And I think that's because I had lots of the portfolios from past years sold out that year, in addition to the portfolio that year that sold out. So it's like this perfect storm of good things happening. But then when we got into 2022, I didn't have that backlog of all these things, of all these editions that haven't sold out yet. So it was, yeah. But room for improvement. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. This year I want to push more, try and find new places to write for. That's my primary focus, is just to figure out new places to write essays or articles, however you want to deem them. I have a lot of plans in place for that. I just found a few different publications that I want to try and pitch, but they'd be amazing to write for if I get in, especially based on their rate and based on the notoriety that they have. But it's a matter of just trying and seeing where it takes you. Because, yeah, I mean, just like with you, I'm trying to come more to terms with the idea of teaching as a full-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I have that guaranteed income, and then whatever I can make off of my writing and photography is more of like, cool, I have this money, like vacation funds, whatever you want to consider it.
Exactly.
And then, I don't know, maybe in 5-10 years, publish books, and maybe it'll be enough where I can be full-time and not have to worry so much about it. But that's more of a long-term goal, at least right now in my current thinking as of March 23rd of this recording. But we'll see how that changes come next week. So
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.